Welcome, everyone, to a monumental edition of our basketball coverage. We are standing at the precipice of a seismic shift in the landscape of international basketball, and the shockwaves are currently reverberating from the heart of Manila to the front offices of leagues around the globe. The breaking news we are dissecting today sounds like a headline pulled from a fan's wildest dreams, yet it is rooted in absolute, undeniable reality. 4 former NBA players, men who have reached the absolute pinnacle of the sport, athletes who possess the pedigree, the scouting reports, and the sheer physical profiles that most hoopers can only fantasize about, stepped onto the hardwood against Gilas Pilipinas and found themselves utterly, completely, and shockingly overwhelmed. They were not merely out-strategized or outshot on a lucky night. They were physically bullied, broken down, and fundamentally proven to be completely out of shape when confronted with the terrifying new strength of Kaisato and the absolute, relentless, steel-forged force that is Adrien Noam. To truly understand the magnitude of this development, we must first contextualize what it means to carry the label of an ex-NBA player. The National Basketball Association is an exclusive fraternity, a crucible that filters out all but the most genetically gifted, highly skilled, and exceptionally conditioned athletes on the face of the earth. When players with NBA experience travel overseas for international competitions or exhibition showcases, they bring with them an aura of invincibility. They carry the expectation that their baseline level of athleticism, their innate physical mass, and their sheer muscular density will be more than enough to dominate opponents, particularly when facing teams from the Asian region. For decades, this has been a bitter, unavoidable truth for Philippine basketball. We have been a nation defined by puso, by an unyielding heart, by breathtaking speed, and by a romantic, desperate refusal to back down from giants. But heart, no matter how vast, eventually collides with the unforgiving laws of physics. Historically, when our boys met former NBA-level talent in the painted area, the difference in sheer physical strength was glaring. We were out-muscled on the boards, pushed out of our spots on the block, and worn down by the heavy, bruising attrition of the game. But not tonight. Tonight, that decades-old narrative was violently, emphatically dismantled. The 4 ex-NBA players in question walked into this matchup expecting a routine display of superiority. They expected the Filipino defenders to yield to their mass. They expected to dictate the spatial reality of the basketball court. Instead, they ran headfirst into a brick wall, and that wall's name is Kaisato. Let us be absolutely clear about what we are witnessing with Kaisato right now. The days of viewing him merely as a lanky, theoretical prospect with a high ceiling are officially, permanently over. The 7'3" behemoth has undergone a physical metamorphosis that defies every outdated stereotype of the Asian big man. He has transformed his body into a biomechanical fortress. Reports and visual evidence from the court confirm that these former NBA big men, players who have traded elbows with the most imposing physical specimens in the world, attempted to establish deep post position against Sotto and were violently rebuffed. They tried to lower their shoulders, drop their hips, and back him down, expecting the familiar give, the slight backward slide that allows an offensive player to get to his hook shot. Instead, they hit concrete. Kaisato's core strength, his widened, incredibly stable base, and his optimized center of gravity allowed him to absorb their maximum impact without yielding a single inch of hardwood. It was a staggering visual spectacle. You could see the confusion, the frustration, and ultimately the exhaustion settling into the faces of these ex-NBA veterans. They were simply not in shape to handle the sheer physical toll of battling a 7'3" titan who now possesses the muscular density to match his towering height. Kaisato did not just protect the rim. He imposed his physical will, making these former top-tier athletes look entirely ordinary, sluggish, and out of their depth. And if the domination in the paint was shocking, what happened on the perimeter was an absolute revelation. Enter Adrien Noam. If Kaisato is the immovable object, Adrien Noam is the unstoppable, relentless force of nature that these ex-NBA guards were entirely unprepared to handle. To the casual international observer, the name Adrien Noam might not carry the immediate recognition of a heavily recruited 5-star prospect. But anyone who has followed the gritty, grueling paths of Philippine basketball knows exactly what this young man is made of. This is a player who honed his craft in the collegiate wars with the Mapua Cardinals, who proved his mettle by capturing the Rookie of the Year honors in the MPBL with the San Juan Knights, and who has been further hardened in the notoriously physical, unforgiving system of Coach Yeng Guio after being drafted 24th overall by the Rain or Shine Elasto Painters. When these former NBA guards matched up against Noam, they clearly expected an easy assignment. They expected a defender they could effortlessly blow by, or one they could easily bump off their driving line with a simple dip of the shoulder. They were catastrophically mistaken. Adrien Noam unleashed a brand of point-of-attack defense that can only be described as suffocating. He utilized his incredibly strong upper body, his lightning-fast lateral quickness, and a relentless, dog-like mentality to completely disrupt the offensive rhythm of his opponents. When these ex-NBA players tried to initiate contact to create separation, Noam did not bounce off them. He absorbed the blow, held his ground, and immediately countered with aggressive, stifling pressure. He stripped them of the ball. He beat them to their spots. He matched their physicality blow for blow, and as the game wore on, a profound reality set in. Adrien Noam was in vastly superior physical condition. The former NBA players were gasping for air, their legs heavy, their handles sloppy, entirely broken by the sheer, unadulterated hustle and the deceptive, overwhelming strength of a Filipino guard who simply refused to be intimidated by their resumes. This is why this headline is dominating the sports conversation. We are not just talking about a good game, we are talking about a paradigm shift. The statement that these four ex-NBA players were not in shape with the strength of Kaisato and Adrien Noam is not hyperbole. It is a clinical assessment of what transpired on the court. It is a testament to the incredible evolution of the Gilas Pilipinas program, the world-class strength and conditioning regimens these players have committed to, and a loud, unmistakable warning shot fired across the bow of international basketball. The Philippines is no longer just bringing heart to the arena. We are bringing size. We are bringing power. We are bringing absolute, unyielding strength, and if you step onto the court relying solely on your past NBA glories, you will be exposed, you will be exhausted, and you will be dismantled. Let us transition now into a comprehensive, granular deep dive into how this monumental shift occurred, breaking down the mechanics, the psychology, and the strategic implications of this historic performance. To fully grasp the magnitude of Kaisato and Adrien Noam physically overpowering four former NBA players, we must dissect this phenomenon layer by layer, starting with the physiological and biomechanical evolution of our 7'3" anchor. For years, the overarching question surrounding Kaisato was never about his skill. From his early days dominating the local high school scene with the 8 Neo Blue Eaglets, his touch around the rim, his incredible passing vision for a player of his stature, and his natural shot-blocking instincts were self-evident. The question was always about mass. Could a player of his unique, slender build survive the brutal, bruising reality of professional, high-stakes international basketball? The journey to answer that question took him across the globe. It took him to the developmental laboratories of the United States, to the highly physical, import-dominated arenas of the Australian National Basketball League with the Adelaide 36ers, and into the fast-paced, highly tactical battles of the Japanese B-League. In each of these stops, Sotto was subjected to different philosophies of strength and conditioning. What we saw on the court against these ex-NBA players was the culmination of thousands of hours of unseen, grueling labor in the weight room. Building strength on a 7'3" frame is not as simple as lifting heavy weights. It requires a meticulous, scientifically calibrated approach to ensure that added muscle mass does not compromise agility, joint health, or cardiovascular endurance. Sotto has clearly added substantial, functional lean muscle. But more importantly, he has fundamentally improved his lower body stability. Basketball, particularly in the post, is a game of leverage. When an opposing center tries to back you down, they are applying hundreds of pounds of force directly into your chest and hips. In the past, Sotto's center of gravity was too high, making it easy for shorter, stouter players to uproot him. Today, he has learned to drop his hips, engage his tremendously strengthened core, and establish a wide, immovable base. When the former NBA big men attempted to execute their standard post moves, the drop steps, the heavy shoulder bumps, the clear-out elbows, they were operating under the assumption that the resistance would eventually break. This is the muscle memory of an NBA veteran. You apply force until the defender compromises his posture, and then you elevate for the shot. But against this evolved version of Sotto, the posture never broke. The resistance was absolute. The psychological toll this takes on an offensive player is immense. When your go-to move, a move that has worked against the best athletes in the world, suddenly results in you bouncing backward off an immovable object, panic sets in. You begin to rush your shots. You begin to alter your release angle to avoid the towering block. And most crucially, you expend twice as much energy just trying to carve out a few inches of space. This is precisely why the headline explicitly notes that these ex-NBA players were not in shape. It is not necessarily that they haven't been running on treadmills. It is that the specific wrestling match style of basketball required to move Kaisato rapidly drained their anaerobic reserves. Sotto's strength acted as a physical tax on every single possession, bankrupting the stamina of veterans who thought they could coast on talent alone. Now, let us shift our analytical lens to the perimeter, to the absolute revelation that is Adrien Noam. If Kaisato represents the evolution of the Filipino big man, Adrien Noam represents the perfection of the Filipino blue-collar guard. To understand how a PBA sophomore managed to bully former NBA guards, we have to look at the environment that forged him. Noam is not a product of entitlement. He is a product of survival. In the collegiate ranks with the Mapua Cardinals, he was tasked with carrying a heavy load, learning how to operate in tight spaces and finish through heavy contact. His stint in the Maharlika Pilipinas Basketball League with the San Juan Knights was perhaps the most crucial crucible. The MPBL is notorious for its rugged, highly physical, almost street fight level of intensity. It is a league where you either learn to absorb contact and play through pain, or you are quickly filtered out. Noam thrived there, winning Rookie of the Year because he possesses a rare combination of elite athleticism and a profound, fearless disregard for his own physical safety. When Noam was drafted by the Rain or Shine Elasto Painters, he entered the orbit of Coach Yang Guio. Coach Guio's philosophy is legendary in Philippine basketball. He demands defensive absolute commitment, mental toughness, and a willingness to engage in physical warfare on the court. Under this tutelage, Noam's natural gifts were refined into a weaponized defensive arsenal. Against the 4 ex-NBA players, Noam deployed this arsenal with devastating effect. The modern NBA guard is accustomed to operating in an environment governed by the concept of freedom of movement. In the NBA, slight bumps on the perimeter are heavily penalized, allowing ball handlers to navigate pick-and-rolls with relatively clean air. But FIBA basketball, and specifically Gilas Pilipinas basketball under this current iteration, operates on a different frequency. Noam crowded the airspace of these ex-NBA guards from the moment they crossed half-court. He utilized a technique known as chest-to-chest defense, mirroring their lateral movements while constantly applying subtle, draining physical pressure. When the ex-NBA players tried to utilize their superior size to shield the ball, Noam attacked their dribble with incredibly strong, active hands. He disrupted their timing. He blew up handoff actions by simply running through the screens, refusing to be deterred by the bodies in his way. This level of point-of-attack defense requires an absurd level of cardiovascular conditioning and core strength. The ex-NBA guards, perhaps expecting a polite, respectful distance from a lesser-known international opponent, were visibly rattled by the sheer ferocity of Noam's approach. Every dribble was contested. Every pass was deflected. When they tried to drive the lane, they found Noam riding their hip, taking the brunt of their shoulders without conceding the driving angle, effectively steering them into the waiting, colossal arms of Kaisato. This brings us to the tactical brilliance of how these two players functioned as a cohesive, defensive ecosystem. The Gilas coaching staff masterfully utilized the contrasting physical profiles of Sotto and Noam to create a nightmare scenario for the ex-NBA players. It was a perfectly executed inside-outside trap. Noam's relentless perimeter pressure forced the opposing ball handlers to make rushed decisions. They could not comfortably set up their half-court offense. Out of frustration, and perhaps a desperate need to escape Noam's shadow, they were goaded into driving toward the basket. But driving past Noam only meant entering the restricted area, the domain now completely governed by the physical presence of Kaisato. In the past, an NBA-caliber guard penetrating the paint against an Asian team would simply elevate, absorb the foul from an undersized center, and finish the and-one play. But against Sotto, that equation is broken. When these players drove, they were met by a 7'3" wall who did not jump at pump fakes, who remained vertically disciplined, and who possessed the core strength to take the mid-air collision without fouling. The ex-NBA players were trapped in a vice. If they stayed on the perimeter, they were hounded to the point of exhaustion by Noam. If they ventured inside, they were swallowed up and violently rejected by Sotto. This dual-layered defensive scheme completely paralyzed the opposing offense, leading to the rapid depletion of their energy reserves. They were not just physically beaten, they were tactically suffocated and psychologically broken. We must also deeply analyze the phenomenon of the ex-NBA player competing in international exhibitions. There is a common misconception that anyone who has donned an NBA jersey is perpetually immune to the challenges of overseas basketball. The reality is far more complex. The NBA season is a grueling 82-game marathon, yes, but it is played under highly specific conditions, with the best sports medicine, travel accommodations, and strictly enforced rules that favor offensive flow. When a player transitions out of the NBA, maintaining that elite, world-class level of cardiovascular and muscular conditioning becomes a monumental personal challenge. Without the multi-million-dollar infrastructure of an NBA franchise pushing them every single day, many former players naturally lose half a step of quickness, or a fraction of their maximum stamina. Furthermore, there is the undeniable psychological factor of entitlement. When these four players agreed to this matchup against Gilas Pilipinas, it is highly probable that they underestimated the level of physical resistance they would encounter. They likely viewed the Philippine team through the outdated lens of the past, a team of quick, passionate shooters who would eventually succumb to sheer size. They did not anticipate facing a 7'3" center whose strength is now forged in the fires of elite international leagues, nor did they anticipate a dogged, ferociously strong guard who views every defensive possession as a battle for his life. This lack of mental preparation directly contributed to their physical collapse. When the game turned into a grinding, physical slog, they lacked the mental fortitude and the immediate physical conditioning to push through the exhaustion. They hit a wall, and that wall was painted in the colors of the Philippine flag. This performance is a monumental testament to the overall direction of the Gilas Pilipinas program. For years, basketball analysts have clamored for a modernization of the national team's approach. We could no longer rely exclusively on dribble drive isolation plays and prayers from the three-point line. We needed to embrace the global standard of basketball, which requires size, positional versatility, elite conditioning, and overwhelming physical strength. The fact that we now have players capable of not just competing, but physically dominating athletes with NBA pedigree, is the clearest indicator that the program's modernization is yielding spectacular, undeniable results. The integration of sports science, advanced nutrition, and elite strength training into the daily routines of our national athletes is paying dividends. Kaisato is the crown jewel of this effort. His transformation is a beacon of hope, proving that with the right environment and an unwavering work ethic, a Filipino athlete can build a physique capable of dominating the highest levels of the sport. Adrien Noam is the terrifying wild card, the proof that the depth of talent in the Philippines is vast, and that when you combine our innate passion for the game with a modernized approach to strength and conditioning, you produce athletes who can terrorize anyone on the perimeter. Imagine the implications of this as we look forward to the FIBA Asia Cup, the World Cup qualifiers, and future Olympic cycles. Opposing scouting reports must be entirely rewritten. Teams from the Middle East, from Oceania, from Europe, who previously penciled in games against the Philippines as a guaranteed advantage in the paint, are now watching this footage in absolute terror. They are seeing an ex-NBA big man try to move Kaisato and fail. They are seeing an ex-NBA guard try to shake Adrien Noam and lose the ball. The psychological advantage has completely flipped. We are no longer the underdogs hoping for a miracle. We are the physical aggressors dictating the terms of engagement. We are setting the screens that leave bruises. We are delivering the bumps on the defensive end that drain the life out of opposing superstars. We have evolved. As we begin to wrap up this extensive analysis, it is vital to take a moment to reflect on the emotional and historical weight of what has just transpired. For every Filipino basketball fan who has stayed up until the early hours of the morning watching international tournaments, for every fan who has felt the agonizing heartbreak of watching our national team fall short simply because the opposing center was 50 pounds heavier, or the opposing guard was just a fraction too strong, this moment is for you. This is the vindication of decades of unwavering, almost irrational support for the sport we love above all others. The headline we discussed today, 4 former NBA players rendered exhausted, out of shape, and physically dominated by the strength of Kaisato and Adrien Noam, is not just a fleeting moment of triumph. It is a historical marker. It is the definitive proof that the ceiling of Philippine basketball has been entirely blown off. We are no longer confined by the physical limitations of the past. Through the incredible dedication of players like Sotto, who absorbed the immense pressure of a nation and transformed his body into a weapon, and players like Noam, who clawed his way from the collegiate ranks to become an international defensive nightmare, we have fundamentally changed our identity on the global stage. For Kaisato, this performance serves as an undeniable resume builder. Any international scout or front office executive who still harbored doubts about his ability to handle the physicality of top-tier professional basketball has just been silenced. He did not just survive contact. He welcomed it, he absorbed it, and he broke his opponents with it. He has cemented himself as one of the premier young big men in the world, an immovable anchor around which the future of Gilas Pilipinas will revolve for the next decade. For Adrien Noam, this is the arrival of a new star. He has proven that the grit, the hustle, and the absolute dog mentality forged in the local leagues translates seamlessly to the highest levels of international competition. He has earned the fear and respect of veterans who have played at the absolute peak of the sport. He is the ultimate two-way weapon, a testament to the sheer depth of talent that resides in our islands, waiting for the opportunity to be unleashed. And for Gilas Pilipinas as a collective entity, this is a terrifying warning to the rest of the world. The narrative has shifted. The team with the biggest heart now also possesses the biggest bodies, the strongest core, and the most unyielding physical presence on the hardwood. The days of bullying the Philippines in the paint are over. The days of brushing past our guards on the perimeter are done. We are here, we are stronger than ever, and we are ready to impose our will on anyone who dares to step onto the court with us, regardless of their resume, regardless of their past, and regardless of the letters on their former jerseys. Thank you for joining me for this comprehensive deep dive. Keep watching, keep believing, and keep supporting our national team, because the revolution of Philippine basketball is not just televised, it is physically overpowering the competition right before our very eyes. This has been your deep dive analysis. Good night, and Laban Pilipinas.